Hi, Diana here with Friday's Memoir-Writing Update. I did so much writing this week. I spent so much time. I was like from morning until late afternoon at my desk. You know, I did my pee breaks, I did eat, I was good with my foundational practices, making sure that I walked, shifted that around, walking early in the morning because of the heat. And that's awesome because by the time I get back, I'm just so ready to write. And of course, because that's such a free flow kind of activity, the walking, and in particular in nature, it provides me with the inspiration to, with all kinds of ideas to come back to and when I get to my writing desk. So this week was a pivotal week, which it usually is because it's the inner critic. So working through step 4, which is the inner critic in the workbook, the Authentic Writing Guide workbook, really provides you with support to manage the inner critic. And I'm going to let you in on a secret because long ago, I used to think of the inner critic as a gremlin, as sort of an enemy, someone who was there to sabotage me and sabotage all of my good thoughts and, you know, what I thought were my truths. And I often, succumbed to the inner critic because it was just easier to believe it rather than think of it in a different way. So at one point, about, I don't know, 8 years ago, I decided to befriend the inner critic and to really listen and hone in on the messages, or, you know, whatever message it was at the time that the inner critic was sending me, to really hone in and take a step back to think about the message that it was sending me, that it was giving me. And often the inner critic is a statement. So I decided to change the statement to a question. So in regards to the writing, for instance, my one challenge this week, because the inner critic doesn't go away, it just keeps coming back. It's just how effectively you manage it that's important. So this week, the inner critic message for me while I was writing was because I was writing about a particular situation. It was when I was 11 years old and we moved to Holland for a great big beautiful experience that I had, and living with my grandparents, and a beautiful experience that I had with my grandmother. And so I was writing about this, and there was a point in while writing that I wondered, how would she feel about me writing about this experience? How would she feel about me including this in the story? Now, of course, she's long past, but it doesn't matter. I want it to be integral. So the inner critic was challenging my integrity within my writing about somebody else. And you will find that this comes up quite a bit within your writing of your memoir, because you do, you know, writing about your experiences, but they include people in your life, and they have to, because that sets the context for the sharing of your story. So what's really important is that you take your inner critic messages, you rephrase them into a question so that you can authentically answer the question and become decisive about how you want to move forward. So in this context, what's important is that you understand that your memoir is your story, obviously. But what's even more important is that you take it a step further and be very clear about that. Not only is it your story, but it's your perception of your story. So it's yours to tell, and to share it in a way that comes from your perception and your experience of it, rather than bringing in other people in your story's perception or what you think their experience might be, because that's where you're being challenged on, is that you're thinking, well, they probably didn't interpret it that way, or they didn't think about this experience that way. And that's okay, because that's their story to share. But your perception is actually your story. And so just because it might be different from somebody else's, and that's why you're questioning it, but just because it's different from somebody else's doesn't mean that it's not valid or that you can't share it. You can, and you can do it in a respectful way that's not throwing them under the bus. So that was, you know, I experienced that this week, was the worry about that. That was my challenge. And then the victory within that was that I reminded myself of, you know, what I support other people to believe is that it is my story to share. and I can honestly and truthfully share it without worrying about someone else's perception about that part of the story. And of course, there are going to be people that aren't going to love your perception or agree with your perception, is probably more to the point. But that's okay. We don't always have to all agree. It's all right. And so that is my sharing of step 4 within my writing. And super excited that I am getting closer and closer to, writing my full memoir. I'm sort of halfway there. I am writing 10 chapters, so not quite, but getting really close. So I hope that's really super helpful, and that you're having a wonderful weekend so far. It's just the start, and enjoy it. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.